So again, the aim here is to show you what you can do by microing the gunship, how you can improve its damage output, or at least its burst damage output, and give it less airtime. So, not too worried about getting rushed, because it is an easy AI. Don't need the base runner. So, something I've discussed before is the value of recycling your base runner. So what you saw me do there is I quickly... Let's just quick drop some more of these. There we go. As close as we're going to get to. So, because I opened on 2 RU, 2 CUs, recycling the base runner is much more valuable to keep my production running. Let's get some power on there. And that's a good enough position now. And we're going to grab AAVs just to deal with any LAVs that the enemy does send out. And rush the gunship. Looking good. Another thing is, it is worth occasionally checking these numbers, make sure they are all full up. It is very easy to have left an idle salvager. So, if you've got nothing better to do, it is best to check your economy is up and running and you haven't suffered any unexpected losses. Another thing, I'm keeping an eye on my RU count so I know when to quick drop, which allowed me to get just enough RUs so that I could go from the AAV tech into the fighter gunship tech. If I were against a player, I would expect to be swarmed by LAVs by now, because they would have come over, scouted me, noticed that there was no base runner out, and just kept flooding me. So, admittedly, I am in a position where I can put out AVs, so it wouldn't actually be that bad. I would be able to stabilize. And now we're just saving up for that gunship, which is going to take a little while. Armored assault online. Aerial strike craft now available for production. A little bit more. Now, one of the biggest problems with the gunship in its current incarnation is, as affordable as it is, relatively speaking, it's not terribly expensive for a heavy aircraft. Although considering the cost of the precision bomber, less unlock cost, but yeah. It has that 55-second build time, which is rather prohibitive. But again, if you are able to sneak out a gunship, it's more about the surprise factor and its difficulty of shooting it down. Again, 1050 HP. Ooh. And we'll grab some power. So, we have our gunship. So, Once you have your gunship, typically people will just find a target and try and dump as much damage as they can on target as quickly as possible. The problem is that the behaviour of the gunship is pretty bad. Now, what we can do, I can tell it to attack this target, but then I can give move orders. You can still see the red attack line is on that LAV, and it will focus that LAV whenever it has range. So, as long as nothing else comes in the targeting reticule, I can keep it firing on the same target and get it to move where I want as it fires. Let's see how your behaviour is when you just fly over normally though. Flies over, targets for opportunity, does not begin attacking. So you do need to be specific. Tell it to attack a target, fly over, and dump damage. Now, unfortunately, this gunship has now run out of ammo, so not much it can do. Now, this attack force isn't actually all that threatening. I've got AAVs to deal with the LAVs, and my carrier can sunder the AAV, making that an easy target. Come on over, Mr. AAV. Suppose, yeah, if we see about grabbing some. So yeah. Quite happily clean up that AAV. We'll also see about grabbing some strike fighters and do some tests with those. Keep going with the power. Again, easy AI is a joke, so I'm not particularly worried about anything. And our gunship is back off cooldown. So, the crucial factor here is being able to select a target. As long as it stays in vision, the target will remain focused. And this allows us to put down good, steady damage on a target. Now notice I'm trying to make sure I don't put the reticule anywhere over another target, because that will then reset it again. Let's see how quickly we can remove this salvager. As you can see, the gunship actually has an incredible turn speed. Its turning capability is not the problem. Its problem is that it is loitering outside of its actual attack range. So, use strike fighters to help clean this up, and we'll grab an extra one of those. And we'll clean up that mess. Probably should grab some railguns for defense. And we'll send a gunship over there to clean that up. Grab ourselves some AA. Now, again, if we go back to just letting the gunship do things itself, again, you saw I was able to just do constant damage to that salvager myself. But if we revert back to gunship behavior, you see it takes long. Yeah, so it's just moving too far away to maintain fire on target. And there's these breaks in the fire which don't need to be there. That is entirely it being out of range, not intentional behavior.
Railgun now available for production.
Do.
Course set. We have target locked.
Hostile contact marked.
Green line verified.
Hostile threat marked on sensors.
As you saw there, that was 3 continuous bursts. There was no real break in between those bursts.
Copy. Go ahead. Enemy unit detected.
We are at maximum fleet capacity.
I need to be more consistent with putting down my...
Support cruiser anti-air weapons.
everything, I suppose.
Designated.
Let's see. Points there.
Roger. Awaiting orders.
Strike fighter ready for deployment. Strike fighter is go for launch.
And is there really much we can do with the strike fighter behavior? Well, again, based on what we've seen,
Enemy signature identified.
we can still do the same thing and have our strike fighters fly straight over the target, but I don't see that as particularly beneficial.
New threat identified.
The strike fighter behavior is such that it doesn't really benefit from
Enemy carrier sighted.
flying over the target like that. I suppose it gives it a much more consistent pattern, but...
We have new bearing on hostile
have I...
target.
Now again, they just don't have the turn speed.
Tracking enemy target.
Also, the larger circle also makes it much harder.
Hostile threat.
So no, really the only micro you can get from strike fighters is move in, they fire, you pull away.
Ready alert. All stations.
So,
Hostile carrier approaching AO.
right, let's deal with this new blob.
Moving. Eyes open out there. We're clear to proceed. Ranged online. New heading set.
There we go. So, I mean, what really is the relevance? Why do I feel it's important to actually spread your units out like this? Well, for one, I'm dealing with coalition, so if they smoke, this actually makes it much harder for them to consistently block all lines of sight on all of these rails. So they throw down smoke, and it's more likely that this one's going to get a line of fire on an angle here, whereas these two might still not. So I can still get some damage on them. Let's start moving this out. Anything else we can really look at? Assault cruiser, not really. We can discuss it somewhat. Tactical bomber, I suppose we can take a look at.
Ready orders.
Really am burning into the RUs though. Let's help that problem slightly.
Roger. Awaiting
Those.
orders.
Cruiser reading. Green light to proceed. Move.
This is the captain.
So what can we do with 2 gunships doing this then?
Salvager online.
Oh, excuse me. I mean, one of the big problems you have with Coalition Air in general is the slow deployment time. It takes so long for them to sort of launch, so deploying a full air force is just impractical and extreme. Now, is there any good targets?
Enemy contact on the board. Enemy on sensors.
Scans active.
Tracking hostile. Hostile threat marked
So,
on sensors.
Microed, you can see the gunships put their damage down quickly enough that it's actually effective.
Enemy sighted. Tracking enemy target.
Green line verified.
Enemy on sensors. Hostile unit marked.
And again, you see there's none of those breaks in the bursts that you typically see.
Enemy unit detected.
Copy.
Hostile railgun destroyed.
New heading. Copy. Turning to paradigm.
So simply by microing your gunships, by giving that attack order and then having the movement order go past the target, you're able to get a lot more damage on target, get a lot more effectiveness out of the gunships. So again, the problem with gunships right now is entirely behavioural. not necessarily in the weapon profile. And yes, gunships can actually be good, as shocking as that may seem. It takes a bit of work, but they can be good.